Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Audible is a really great source for getting audiobooks at a really great price. And one of the reasons that we love audiobooks is that you can listen to them while you're on the road, in a car, on a plane, a train, anywhere in the world. We've got a special promotion with Audible where you can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/theworldwanderers. If you need a book recommendation, one of our favorite books through Audible is The Art of Travel by Alain de Botton. This is a great book for any fellow travel lovers out there, as it gives a really great perspective on how travel can change your mindset and how travel can sort of shift the way that you think, which is something that we're all about over here at the World Wanderers. So visit www.audibletrial.com/theworldwanderers to download your free copy of The Art of Travel or any other travel book or anything else that you might be interested in for your next trip. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by you, the fans of the show. If you would like to support the show, go to www.patreon.com/theworldwanderers. And for just a small amount, you can support the show, and a little goes a long way. Thanks in advance for your support.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. We've got an exciting episode for you today. Do you want to tell our listeners what it's about?
Yeah, definitely. We are just doing a bit of a life update-isode. So,
a life update-isode. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, we've hinted over the last few episodes about stuff that's going on within our lives and our plans. So, selling all our stuff was really coordinated around our move, and then Fear and Travel was about how we're focusing on the next place we want to go, dealing with some anxieties about traveling there. So yeah, today is all about what is next on the page of the World Wanderers podcast.
Yeah, and it's actually been pretty cool to hear from listeners who have reached out to us and asked, what's going on with you guys? What's next for you? Is it a secret? No, it's never a secret. It's mostly not public because we haven't really known, which is kind of an interesting thing. We're going to go to Central America. I mean, Central America has been the plan since like 2015. We were going to go there before Atlanta ever became a thing. And then Atlanta came up and we were like, okay, Central America will be there in, a year. And then we came back to Canmore for a couple months and we're like, Central America. And then we've kind of recently had a change of thoughts and plans. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we are going instead to Asia.
We think. Life can always change.
Yeah, our initial plan had been to go to Central America in the fall and then at some point in the new year go over to Asia because we have friends in Macau we really want to get together with.
Yeah, some friends. So Josh Lovestone's been on the podcast before. He was one of our very first interviews back in probably an episode that's still in like the teens or the early 20s. So one of our very, very first episodes. And him and his wife Tanis are two of our really good friends. And they're also international teachers. And they're going into their second year teaching at an international school that teaches on the Alberta curriculum in Macau. So it was always something that we wanted to do. We're like, we've got these friends who have a spare room who are like, come stay with us. It'd be super cool to see you guys. And we're like, yes, we've always wanted to go to Macau. Macau bungee jump is there. Lots of other cool stuff. It's like the Vegas of Asia. So we'd originally thought, okay, we'll go down to Central America for a couple months and then we'll fly our way over to Asia in the new year. And I don't really know what sort of like spawned the change in plans. I think it was kind of like a bunch of different things.
Yeah, and just kind of realizing that for us, the most expensive part of our trips are going to be traveling, like actual like transportation, the actual traveling. Once we are places, it'll be fine. So deciding to go Central America for 3-4 months and then Asia for 3-4 months and then come back to Canada in the summer. It's like, does that really make sense? Or would it just make more sense to spend that whole time over in Asia? And we're like, yeah, that sounds good. So we were poking around, found out that there's the TBEX Asia conference happening in the Philippines in October. We're like, that would be an awesome place to start.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Yeah. So we don't have flights thus far, but we'll obviously keep listeners updated as we do. But just sort of talking about the things that are going on with us as, we approach like the 4-week mark before setting off in our adventures to Asia. And Asia feels so different from Atlanta for so many different obvious reasons, but also because...
What do you mean?
I mean, Asia versus the United States. So I wasn't really like, oh, I should probably get like ciprofloxacin or like malaria medication before going to Atlanta, Georgia. But, those things kind of like cross my mind a little bit more going to places like Thailand or not Macau, but, China, places where there's bad water.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is what you're hinting at, but for me, it's like this is a very unique trip that we are doing, because in the past when we've traveled, we've kind of quit our jobs, left all of our responsibilities at home, and just said, okay, cool, we're out. Atlanta was different, but that was much more of a move than a trip in a way. We were like moved to Atlanta.
Yeah.
So this is the first time where we're traveling, going to developing countries, and bringing along work, computers, and a life that we have to maintain at home. And that kind of raises a lot of like...
what the hell are we doing questions?
Not that, but just like a bit more anxiety. Like you have to be a bit more worried about finding somewhere where you can live that has Wi-Fi that's good so you can keep up your responsibilities. Kind of just wondering about how it's all going to work out. Like, is this kind of location independent lifestyle that we've been dreaming of actually going to be something we find satisfactory now that we're going to go do it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of where I was getting to on a broader scale. I think I was just doing it slower. But yeah, it's so much different from the other trips we've taken. I mean, we've never even taken laptops traveling with us before. So that's a big thing. I think the first time we traveled, you only had an iPod. We didn't even travel with cell phones, which is something that our friends Julia and Steve, who are friends from Atlanta and who have also done some traveling. Steve Patterson, he has a podcast. You guys should check it out. It's called Patterson in Pursuit if you're interested in philosophy. But anyways, they were talking to me about like, what did you do? Did you unlock your cell phone? Did you get a SIM card in countries? And I was like, y'all, I didn't even bring a cell phone the first time I traveled. And they were actually mind boggled. Like, how did you get around? And I was like, maps. That sort of stuff. And the second time we traveled, we took iPhones, but they were on airplane mode the entire time.
And they were both kind of old by that point.
Yeah, like old iPhone 4s.
So we've never really like traveled with much stuff that we've been worried about losing, let alone that's been like necessary for us to maintain job responsibilities.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's completely different in that sense. And it's like, if somebody stole like my crappy old iPhone 4, it wasn't the end of the world because I also had like a camera and an iPad and that sort of stuff. And now it's like, if my iPhone 6 goes missing, that's a little bit more concerning. But even more so is my laptop with all of my work and my life on it, which is something that's definitely like not keeping me up at night, but it's something that I think about regularly as we approach this trip.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's been like Wi-Fi anxiety. Like, what if there's no good Wi-Fi in the Philippines?
Yeah, and I think that that's something that we're going to have to work through and overcome. Or, even thinking about things like when we arrived in Canmore, we were having a really hard time with echo on our podcast and finding a space where we had good place to get good sound. And that's something that I also think about. We want to be travel podcasters who travel on the road, but what the hell happens if we get somewhere and there's like nowhere good and quiet to record? How do we overcome these things, and how do we still create a life as digital nomads with the possibilities of these things being hard?
So a couple years ago when we got home from South America, we were both really on this bent, like, oh, it would just be so much cooler if we could just continue. Well, even years before that, we both thought for a long time that it would be awesome to be able to make money and travel at the same time. And so we've kind of been working towards that direction, and now it's like here. How do you feel about it now? Is it like less alluring to you now that it's like actually something that's possible?
less alluring in the fact that I don't feel as excited about it, or?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think that I'm a mixture of excitement and anxiety. And it's like the first time we went backpacking, I was like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know what this is going to be like. What if we hate each other traveling? Like all these things that I was so uncertain about. And then going to South America was like, okay, I've got this. I've done this before. Like I know what this is going to be like. And this feels different. It's like, okay, I kind of know what this is going to be like, but it's going to be different because every day isn't dedicated to a new city or a new adventure. It's like there needs to be like regular time carved out in the day for actually getting work done. So it's like living, but living somewhere that's more affordable and somewhere that's cool.
So when you picture actually being a digital nomad, how have you thought about work-life balance while traveling?
Well, I think that work-life balance is really important to me, which is why I would like to be working more for myself than for somebody else, because I don't really like the restraint of being on somebody else's hours. So really choosing how I want to set up my day, whether or not that's getting up and doing yoga and maybe an activity in the morning and working through the afternoon and into the evening, or vice versa. So I don't think it's like a strict, like, I work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday and I can't do anything between those hours. The reason why I want to control my own schedule is so that I can be like, oh, cool. You know, our new other digital nomad friends are going ATVing in the jungle at noon tomorrow. Like I'm going to work my day around so that I can join them, type thing. And finding a balance between exploring and getting stuff done.
It's something that I've kind of wondered about for me, because in the past when we've traveled, it's been very free of responsibility, and that's been really good for me. And one of the things I've really enjoyed about it, being disconnected, just kind of having time to not necessarily be focused on doing anything, but just kind of focusing on my interests and doing what I'm enjoying at the moment. So thinking about balancing like being a tourist with having work to do, especially because I'm someone who's not like a super schedule or anything, has kind of been a little bit confusing for me as I've thought about it. And I think it's going to be something I'm going to have to learn as we go, but like be more vigilant about scheduling in work times and scheduling in like explore city time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's going to be something that's probably going to be a challenge for us at first, and something that, you know, it's one thing like figuring out how you're going to schedule your own day and then kind of coordinating that with another person who might have like a different idea of how to work their day. So something that we're going to have to, you know, be kind of like figuring out as we go as a duo traveling, but also figuring out individually as well. It's probably the thing that makes me feel the most anxious is like, you know, do I really like working on the road, or do I prefer to, you know, save enough money so that I can travel and not work? Like, you know, is it really like the travel I love and being away, or is it like I would rather just be at home doing this thing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the question of like, oh, instead of either or, I want both. And then it's like, actually, is having both going to work? And one thing I think that's kind of impacted my perspective on this, and probably our perspective on this, is just how long it's been since we've really gone out and traveled. So we moved to Atlanta. That was more of a move. We both did 1 month trips on our own, but we haven't been on a long-term backpacking trip in 2.5 years now. And I think that some of the way I felt traveling and some of the ideas I had and the enjoyment I was having about exploring new places has kind of faded over time. Can you relate to that at all?
Yeah, I definitely can. And I think that, not that I feel like I'm getting old, but I think that just as I get a little bit older, it's like I feel a little bit more like kind of like nesting and snuggling into a place and not moving around as much, even though there's like the part of me that's still like, no, you don't want to, like, you're not ready to just stay somewhere forever. So that's going to be an interesting thing as well, to see how we do with sort of these like 1 to 3 month stints in places. And
yeah, because the time frame's also different. Like we're trying to do kind of a slower form of travel.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that we should share with listeners as well. Is in the past, with our 2 big backpacking trips, we've kind of done like 3 to 4 day stints in places, maybe a week at most. I know Buenos Aires was like a massive time period spent in one place, and that was 14 days, which is not long-term traveling at all. So kind of our goal this time is to spend more like 1 to 3 month chunks of time in places. And that's what's kind of interesting about deciding where to go. So it's like, okay, this conference that we want to go to is in Manila in the Philippines, but it's like, I've never really heard anything great about Manila, so I don't really want to commit a month there. So it's like, do we go explore the islands a little bit and then spend a bit of time in Manila and then start our 1 month trip? Or do we commit to this, like, nope, everywhere we go, we spend 1 month? And that is another sort of challenging thing is, if you pick a place and you just decide to go there and then there's crap Wi-Fi or there's like crap food or, it's just not working for us. It's not like, okay, we just have 1 more night booked here. It's fine. We'll move on. It's like, maybe we have longer term booked and we kind of have to deal with that. So those are some other things that I think about a little bit that kind of make me anxious.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's like one of those situations where what's really motivated us to go in this direction is having flexibility. So I think just remembering that the whole point is to have flexibility to be wherever we want to be working. So if we find out we don't want to be anywhere, we can always just say, let's go somewhere else.
Yeah, totally. And it's been interesting as we've told like family and friends our plan when they're like, well, when are you going to come back? And it's like, well, we'll be back for summer for sure next year. But, other than that, we might just be gone. And I think that keeping it open-ended is nice for me because it's like, maybe we also will be back. Maybe it's not what we want, or maybe it's not working for us, or maybe we have a change in plans. Anything can happen, and I want to be really like open, and I just open for that and open for those possibilities.
Yeah. So right now we've got the Philippines on our list. We've got Macau on our list, and we've kind of talked about Chiang Mai and Thailand. But where else? What other destinations do you really want to get to while we're in Asia?
I thought going back to Indonesia could be cool so that you could see like Bali specifically is where I've been, but even checking out some of the other islands I think could be cool depending on the Wi-Fi situation. Myanmar is somewhere that I really want to go, and I think that might be somewhere that we maybe take as more of a vacation. It's things that we've talked about is, there's some countries such as Myanmar that just open its borders and it's not a developed country. It's not a place where I feel like we can go in having the expectation for really good Wi-Fi, because I don't know if that is the case. And from what I've read online, doesn't seem like it is. Might be a better place to sort of, feel like we're taking a bit of a vacation, so we'll be gone for a couple of weeks type thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of 1 to 3 month apartment rentals in cities where we can really work and kind of get to know that city and what it's like to live there, and then intersperse that with, kind of like a more standard vacation to some other places, like probably China, Myanmar.
Yeah, and even I think Japan, just because of how expensive I think Japan is, unless we can find like a house sit or something there, or split with friends or something like that. I think that might be more of a vacation as well. But Japan is somewhere where I'm really keen to see. I really, really love green tea and I really love matcha. So, and sushi. So I feel like it's right up my alley.
Are there any other cities that you really want to spend like at least a month living in and getting to know?
I feel like I've heard Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia is cool. I would also love to go to Singapore.
Isn't Kuala Lumpur Indonesia?
No, it's Malaysia. It's definitely Malaysia.
Is Jakarta Indonesia?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Singapore as well is somewhere that interests me.
Yeah. What about Saigon, Ho Chi Minh?
Yeah, I loved Ho Chi Minh City the first time we went.
And we were only there like 3 days or something.
Yeah, I think that could be really cool. And I remember when we talked to Idosa Ness from the Mimic Method, he was currently in Ho Chi Minh City. We had great Wi-Fi with him. So I think that would be a cool place as well. Bangkok as well interests me. I know I was telling a friend at a wedding that we went to last week, and she was like, oh, do you really want to live in Bangkok? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not opposed to it because I didn't really want to live in Atlanta and I sort of fell in love with the city. So I'm not really opposed to much at this point as long as there's good Wi-Fi, some decent food, and it doesn't seem like a super dangerous place to be.
Yeah, I think for me, if we came back 9 months from now and we're like, oh, we spent a month in Bangkok, we spent like a month or two in Saigon, we spent a month in Macau, we spent a month in Kuala Lumpur, like those would all be cities that I would be really happy to have spent a long time in.
Yeah, totally. Is there any way that or anywhere that you're like, no, I don't really want to go there?
No, there really isn't. Other than one of the main motivations for us making this trip is to focus on entrepreneurial stuff and to have a cheaper cost of living. So places like Seoul, Korea, which I definitely want to go to, maybe isn't affordable for us or Tokyo, Japan, or somewhere like that in Japan.
Hong Kong, even.
Hong Kong, where it's like Singapore would be cool cities to go check out, but just probably aren't on our budget. And then the other places are just like places where don't have the connectivity required to maintain the lifestyle. So like looking up Manila, it just did not seem like it was the type of place where it would be good for a digital nomad.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I know we talked to people, Jeremy from
Go Curry Cracker.
Yeah, about living in Chiang Mai, and he said it was awesome. So that's definitely a place that's on my list as well.
Yeah, and something that we've also talked about, and obviously if there's any people who have done things like this, we'd love to hear your opinions on it and hear what you kind of think about this idea. But talking about getting a place for 3 months, say in Chiang Mai, and then taking, getting to like Laos for a week or something like that, or a weekend is not that hard, or going to Myanmar for a little bit, and kind of being able to do stuff like that, obviously depending on the price. Something that's really cool about being over in Asia, just from the amount of research that I've done thus far, is that it's pretty affordable to fly from place to place or to get around via bus. And I think that's the big thing, that when we think about like, okay, sweet, if we're living somewhere really affordable, but then we want to go to somewhere like Tokyo, Japan, we don't really have the disposable income to just take this big expensive trip. Like it's not really feasible for us at this time, but it's like we're over there, so we want to go. So kind of finding the balance of those two and seeing, what we can do to sort of make that cost effective or make that work for us.
Yeah. So if you thought about your anxieties about the trip, what's kind of standing out for you?
I think some of the logistical things are a bit confusing for me. Like just thinking about even going to the United States. And I know that most countries that we're going to are going to be quite different from the United States, but it's like, or even coming back here. So what I'm thinking specifically is finding a place to live is like, sometimes it can be really difficult when you don't have a job or a steady income, or you don't have so much money in your bank account. And it's like, oh, what's that going to be like if we try to get somewhere? Is it easy to find places that are affordable? And
yeah, I remember for anyone who's listened to the episode with Hunter Stanford and him talking about finding a place to live in Bogota, it's like a fun story to hear about, but it doesn't exactly sound like a fun experience to partake in.
Totally. And I just think about like, okay, Jeremy describes this like beautiful place with an infinity pool for $400 in a month. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a freaking dream come true. But like, how does one go about doing that? And I'm excited for this new adventure. I'm excited to, take that challenge on and be able to bring it to our listeners and be like, yes, this is how we overcame it. But it's definitely something that like is on my mind in terms of, okay, we show up in this city with like a couple nights booked at a hostel with the intention of being like, okay, we're going to find somewhere to live for at least a month with the potential of longer if we like it. How does one go about doing that in a country where you don't speak the language and you don't have a local bank account and you don't have a local phone number and, all those things that you kind of need in Canada and the US that can kind of prevent you from getting those things? Like, are those barriers going to be in our way in Thailand, or is that just, is it easier than over here? And I just don't know.
Yeah, I do think though that most of these places, like, it's common enough that there's probably lots of good online resources for it, and things like Airbnb are great for this, and other house finding services that are online.
Totally. And I mean, we're a part of trustedhousesitters.org, so hopefully we'll be able to do some house sitting over there. We're a part of couch surfing, although I'm not sure if we're going to do that, but after our last experience. But we also are still open to hostels, and Airbnb, of course, is a great way to figure out what neighborhoods are safe and good and all of that jazz. But it's still like, I can say that time and time again in my head, but it doesn't make me feel really like less anxious about it. It's still something that I'm like, yeah, I'll feel like better once I've actually maneuvered it myself. Once I've actually.
So you're actually like
out.
legitimately anxious about finding a place to stay?
Yeah, like in a longer term fashion. Like we've never really done that in another country.
Yeah, I guess I've just kind of thought of it as being like a relatively straightforward and simple process.
And the thing like about it too is that Wi-Fi is key. So, and Wi-Fi is kind of our biggest factor, but also something that's like within our price range and in a safe neighborhood. So it's like all those things are things that we kind of have to figure out. And I feel like it's just something that I imagine sounding easy in theory, but maybe being harder in reality. And I could be totally wrong about that depending on the place. But I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited about the prospect of going to this travel bloggers conference, because I feel like we met so many cool people in and around North America. And I'm like, okay, maybe this will draw, you know, the other travel bloggers and travel podcasts who are sort of expats in Asia, and we can, you know, pick their brains and find out that information before we fully dive into it.
Yeah, definitely.
What's the thing that you're most anxious about, or what things are you most anxious about?
Yeah, we kind of already hit on it earlier in the podcast, but it's just finding a good balance between enjoying traveling and handling my responsibilities. And from before, a lot of what I loved about traveling was kind of having this break and kind of mental freedom. So just finding that balance where I can actually enjoy traveling while also getting a bunch of stuff done.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's a part of you that's worried that maybe this thing that you've been working towards is not what you actually want?
So I think that I've forgotten a little bit of how much I enjoy travel. And so something that's been motivating me lately is like this desire for comfort, which I feel like is very natural and normal, without kind of paying enough attention to the things I've learned in the past about how being uncomfortable and getting out of your comfort zone is like the best way to grow, the best way to actually like feel alive. So I think that living in a more nomadic fashion is going to be really good for me. I think that getting like drastically outside of our culture is going to be really great for my just like level of daily presence, my ideas, my ability to think things through and just like feel inspired. I think that'll all be really good.
Yeah, definitely. And I can echo that like piece of nervousness as well, is like, you know, what's it going to be like when we show up somewhere really cool and there's like all this really fun stuff to do, but it's like, no, we've got, you know, a podcast episode to put out and, you know, maybe a video to put out or this and this to do and blog posts to write. And
yeah, and I think the thing about that is just like, that's why we're staying places for longer. Mm-hmm. So that we can find the time to enjoy and explore a city, but also get stuff done. And then the other thing is, I think something we've learned as we've traveled is that the things we enjoy more now aren't necessarily going out to the popular tourist destinations, but finding cool restaurants, finding cool places to explore, cool parks to hang out in, and meeting people. So like this is a really great opportunity to go out and actually meet people who live in these places because we are there long enough to form relationships.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. And that's something that I've thought about as well, is that it'll be good to be somewhere and be like, okay, there's like no rush to go and do this like really cool thing that there is to do, like go do this popular hike or something, because we've got, you know, a whole bunch of time to sort of get this stuff done slowly and it's not a big rush. I think that, you know, there's things like the Great Wall of China I would really still like to see, and the Terracotta Warriors. There are some tourist things that I am still interested in, but definitely less and less. And I think that also going somewhere that's, I don't know, I want to say like not Europe. Like I feel like there's just so much stuff to see in Europe that's been popularized that it's like more about like the things I really like seeing are either really cool buildings in a city or really beautiful nature, and then cafes and restaurants, like you said. So I feel excited for like the exploration part of it.
Yeah, and someone that I've been thinking about a lot as we go to do this is Carolyn McPherson, who's been on the podcast 2 times.
She's been on our podcast once and MBO once.
Because she's really been living in a way that's more similar to what we're doing, where she's gone and lived in Korea, in Manila, in Central America,
India,
Dominican Republic, India, and now Angola. So we might need to get her back on the podcast to coach us on how to move into a new city and how to set up a life in a new place that's not necessarily the most comfortable.
Yeah, and it's been interesting talking to her for both Ryan and I's podcast that you're listening to, and then my yoga podcast called MBO, because she's a yoga teacher as well. Talking to her and hear her say like, I haven't really traveled. And I'm like, what do you mean you haven't traveled? Like, of course you've traveled. And she's like, I haven't really though, because I go somewhere and the thing that she likes the most is really getting to know one place. And it's something that is hard for me to understand because that's not how I've been in the past, but I feel excited to sort of branch out and become more that sort of traveler and really embrace that sort of lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of things that we're sort of like going through right now, like we talked about our episode before our last one was on selling all of our stuff, and then our last one was on fear in travel. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the things that are going on in life right now, like current things like pre-trip preparation, et cetera, et cetera?
So, I mean, it's not a whole lot other than just liquidating all the stuff we've accumulated and booking flights. It's pretty simple.
Not a whole lot other than liquidating all the stuff.
Well, so I think one of the things that's been really good is that we've moved pretty constantly. So we lived in Canmore, moved down to Atlanta, moved back up here, so we don't have too much stuff to get rid of. A car, some clothing, books. But like, I don't think it's not going to be a significant hassle compared to how it's been in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I'm grateful for, this is the first time we're owning like zero furniture. It's like, I think we own some like bedside table lights, and that's about it, in a laundry basket. So I'm really grateful for the fact that we don't have furniture to get rid of, because that's been like the biggest stressor in the past. I think for me, and I mentioned this on the What to Do with All Your Stuff episode, this is the first time where I'm not planning to let my car sit. So, just the process of like cleaning out this car that I've owned for almost 10 years and like looking through the trunk and being like, shit, man, there's so much stuff back here that, where do I even begin, and paying to get it detailed, and then posting photos, and then going through whatever process there is in terms of actually selling the car, and then figuring out all the details of getting our stuff between our parents' house and making sure that we don't have too much stuff, I think is something that's really on my mind right now.
Yeah, and I think that for me, it's just been like this reminder about how much of a hassle having stuff actually is. So it's like, it'd be so much nicer if I had less clothing, because like I don't really use that much clothing anyways, but I've got more than I use. And having to get rid of that. Or even for me, something that I've been kind of transitioning out of is really loving physical books. I've got my e-reader now. I'm buying books on that, but I've still kind of accumulated all these books here in Canmore, even though we've only been here for 3 months. And I'm like, it'd be so much nicer if I didn't have to worry about storing these anywhere. So I'm actually like looking forward to kind of detaching myself and being down to a backpack and just feeling the freedom of living a lot more minimalistic life.
Yeah, I was texting with one of my yoga teacher friends today, and one of the parts of, there's 8 limbs to yoga. I won't give a whole lecture on that, but a part of it is non-attachment. And I was thinking about as like, it actually comes to selling this car that I've owned since I was like 18 years old. I was like, do I actually want to get rid of it? Like this car drove me down to Atlanta by myself. Like,
well, you drove it.
I drove her, but so her name's Gloria. She's like totally a person for me because we spent 36 hours together. Just me and her. Like, she got me to Atlanta. I feel like really close with her, and Ryan doesn't seem to get it. But there's this principle of non-attachment, and I'm like, there's so many things over the last couple of years that I feel like I've practiced non-attachment with that have been so positive. And one that sounds so silly was getting rid of a phone number. It was the only phone number I'd ever had. And I was so attached to it because I'd had it for how long? 15 years, 10 years when I got rid of it. And it was actually so freeing to be like, it's just a phone number. It, means nothing to my identity. It doesn't have anything to do with who I am. And I think the car will be the same way, but it's like, oh, Gloria, like my big bootied Pontiac. Like, just part of me doesn't want to do it,
But I think this is one of the awesome things about living a more nomadic life and moving around from place to place is that it does kind of force you to have this discomfort on a more regular basis, but it just makes you a lot more resilient in the long term. Like moving out from Atlanta and then moving out from Canmore in such a short period of time is kind of annoying. Like there's a part of me that's like, oh, it would be nice if we were just like, settled in somewhere. Didn't have to worry about moving. But I think that kind of not getting locked into having too much stuff and being forced to be in new cities, meet new people, all this like discomfort that comes from moving around is actually really beneficial when you look at a big picture 5 years from now, how you're going to feel, the stuff you're going to have to learn through the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I can totally agree with is like, you can really feel like stuff sort of possesses you and bogs you down by being in your space. And it's so nice to like free yourself of these things you own. I know that, having storage units was something that was like that, and having vehicles for us was something that was like that too. When you get an email from your parents, it's like, hey, there's mice that got in your storage unit, or hey, there's mice that got in your car. And it's like, ugh, I just don't want to deal with that shit when I'm so far away. And being able to free yourself from that is very like, I don't need to worry about all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up our update on what life's been like. We'll keep everyone updated on how the selling of our stuff and the downsizing's going. And obviously, you'll hear from us in future episodes when we've booked flights and finalized our plans. And if anyone's going to be in Southeast Asia around mid-October through till spring of 2017, definitely reach out to us. We'd love to meet up with you. If you've ever lived abroad or been a digital nomad or have any suggestions for us, we'd also love to hear from you. You can email us at info@theworldwanderers.com.
Yeah, as always, thank you for listening.
Bye.
To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers 1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.